And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Chippy here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 13. To all you new listeners out there, hello and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike and I'm a freelance photographer from Sydney, Australia. Each week on the show I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. In today's episode I want to speak about 3 misconceptions that I used to have about telling my own story. You see, I always thought that in business nobody really cared about who you are as long as you could get the job done. Now, while that's partly true, I also think it's true that people like to know who you are before they book you to do a job, especially in an industry like mine in photography, where it is a very personal experience that I'm trying to provide. So, by the end of today's episode, I hope that you guys understand the importance of authoring your own story in the most personal way possible. But before I jump into that, I want to take some time to talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And it's actually been quite a short week because as I'm recording this, it is the 6th of April. So it's the Tuesday after the Easter long weekend. So I actually took a little bit of a break over the long weekend. I normally spend some of my weekends working on some things, but I took quite a few days off over the long weekend, which was great. And I said this on Instagram at the end of last week that I was looking forward to taking a break over the weekend. I don't normally look forward to having breaks. I'm not someone that really looks forward to the weekend. I'm not excited to take a break from work because I rather enjoy the work that I like to do. And it's always been a case for me that I've been really striving to work as much as I can because I enjoy the work that I can. And I feel like while I've got the time in my hands to work, I should be trying to put the work in and trying to get ahead in life and get ahead with the business. But over this past couple of months, it's been a real grind, I'd say. And I think it was good for me to have a bit of time off and time over the weekend. Even though I've had days off before, I think I can still get caught up in still working and still being in that mindset of working when I'm not actually at work. And so to have about 4 days where you really switch off and unplug from the computer. I don't think I opened the computer all weekend, which was really nice to sort of step back and try and get away from it, because it's amazing how after that first or second day of not being in contact with the work, you start to sort of not think about it as much, and it becomes less of a focus on your thoughts, and you're more able to switch off and think about other things and really focus that way. So over the weekend I took a break and I've been reading my book a lot. I've started reading the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. I'm sure most of you guys have probably heard of that one. It was a very highly recommended book to me and I've been wanting to read it for quite some time, and I actually found it a couple of weeks ago at the bookstore, and I'm into the 3rd chapter, I think, and it's been really good. It's all about why natural talent isn't as important as passion and determination, and it's something that I've always agreed with, that I think I spoke about in a few episodes ago, in episode 11, about how I'm not the most creative person, but I think I have a lot of determination, a lot of passion for the work that I do, and so any skill can be learned and you don't have to be naturally talented at it. And I think more so to that, I think that if you're passionate and determined to do something, that you can actually probably do more and probably have more longevity in a career than someone who is just naturally talented at it and isn't as inspired to go out there and do the work just because they have some sort of talent in that required field. So that has been really good, and it's been really good to unplug and sort of read a lot more over the weekend. I've been trying to read a lot more this year, as you know, and I'm actually up to my 4th book at the moment, which is great because we're in April. So I hopefully have this book done by the end of the month, and we can then move on and keep going towards my aim of reading 12 books this year. One of my other goals that I've been working towards is my half marathon, and I've been trying to train as much as I can to try and run that half marathon, which is actually this coming weekend. It's my first one of the year, or my first one in the past 3 years. I haven't run one in quite some time, and this was a big goal of mine for this year, was to run a half marathon after having taken so much of a break and being away from training for that for so long. And I was looking forward to getting back into it. I sort of have been working up to it all this year, and having known a couple of months out that this was the date or the weekend that I was going to be running, I've been really working hard up to that. But now I think we're just resting off and seeing how well we can do this weekend. I'll let you guys know in next week's episode how I go, but I'm really looking forward to it. And regardless, I'm not trying not to put too many expectations on it, because it's not going to be the only one that I run this year. So this is really just sort of a practice run for me to see how I go, and I'm going to be really interested to see what sort of numbers I can do there. Well, one of the other things I wanted to talk about this week was just jumping back into last week's episode, and not about the specific topic of last week's episode. You probably, if you haven't heard last week's episode, do recommend go back and have a listen to that, because I really enjoyed last week's episode, basically because the information that I was trying to provide there, I really enjoyed and really resonated with, and that episode just felt so natural to me, and it felt like something that I was really inspired to talk about, and really glad that I could get those 5 points out there to you guys. And that has always been something that has been in the back of my mind, and things that I do think about all the time, because it's something that I'm quite passionate about, in being able to start something before you are ready to start. And I think there's too much around in the world today about saying that you need to be prepared and you need to make sure you have all your eggs in the right basket. But I think for me, it was just really a case of just jumping in, and I'm very happy with the journey that has led me on. And while it may have been hard at some points, I'm very glad with what I'm actually learning along that journey, and the things that I've been able to do have just been phenomenal. So I was really happy with last week's episode, and I really love the style of that. So I'm going to hope to continue with more episodes like that, and continue to provide as much information as I can and as much value for you guys as I can, because I don't want you guys to just be listening to these episodes and not really gaining anything from them. So that is really something that I hope to do moving forward. It's interesting because I try to make a balance with these episodes of the things that I try to talk about, because I obviously have ideas of things that I want to talk about, but I also try to lean towards what I think you guys want to hear about, and things that I think can provide value. I have a big list of ideas for episodes, but obviously I'm sort of steered towards episodes that have done well before, and trying to talk about those sort of topics, because there's no point talking about something if no one's actually going to listen to that episode anyway. So I'm trying to provide as much value as I can in these episodes, so that you guys hopefully will actually take something away from them and be able to listen to them a lot more. So that is interesting, but it's also a case of the numbers on the episodes are probably skewed in the way that if I don't promote an episode, if I don't let you guys know that an episode is available, like if I don't post about it on Instagram or my stories and things like that, the amount of people who actually listen to episodes significantly decreases. And I've generally noticed that as a trend, but I don't love to advertise each week's episode. I don't think it needs to be something like that. I'm not actually trying to do this as a career, so this is just sort of something on the side if anyone's interested. So I'm trying not to look at the numbers too heavily, because I know it is skewed in that way to if I do promote an episode or actually let you guys know about it, then more likely people are going to actually go and have a listen to the episode, or at least start the episode anyway. So I've been trying to not look too much into that, but there are certainly some episodes that have done a lot better than others, and trying to steer myself towards those episodes. But it's also great because those type of episodes are things that I enjoy as well. So they're definitely areas that I like talking about, and they may not be direct areas that I initially thought would be areas that people were interested in. And that's quite all right as well, because as I said, I really enjoy talking about those type of things. Now, one last thing I wanted to speak about before we jump into today's topic is something that I did this morning, which was that I went and got a haircut. Now, you may be asking why I would be letting you guys know that I went and got a haircut this morning, because I'm just on a podcast here and you probably didn't even need to know that. That doesn't really have any relevancy to this episode or any episode moving forward. However, I just want to speak about the act of actually having a haircut. And it has always been something for me that I haven't ever enjoyed. Now, this is not for the actual haircut itself. I don't actually mind having my hair cut. I'm not opposed to people actually cutting my hair. I know some people get weirded out by other people having their hands all over their head and things like that, and especially in these times it can seem a bit weird. I'm not super fussed about that, but it's the whole interaction of having a haircut, and it's always been something for me that I've really struggled with and really not enjoyed. It's not a very pleasant experience for me, because I'm not someone that loves to go into a barbershop and have a conversation with someone who's there. And it's always been drilled into me that when you do go to a hairdresser, I don't know if all you guys are the same, but when you go to a hairdresser, the small talk that seems to take place is just not of any interest at all to me or anyone else in the room. It's just trying to be polite, in my opinion, and we're not actually talking about anything of any substance. I'm there for about 15 to 20 minutes, and asking me questions about my day is not really what I want to be up to at that point in time, Like it's already awkward enough situation to walk in there and have a man put his hands all over your head, let alone asking you personal questions about your life. And that has always been something that's really weirded me out. But recently I've found a few hairdressers that I like going to that I can just walk in there and say, here's what I want, and that's the end of story. They'll just do that, and I'll never have to have a conversation with them. And I find that to be quite a great style, which is in opposed, I guess, to the style of work that I'm trying to work into. I guess working into photography, it's very, very personable, very interactive, trying to create that experience with another person. So I do need to get to know them a lot more. So I think it has been a struggle for me to try to do that, because that is not something that comes very naturally to me. And I'm not sure if that's something that just doesn't come naturally to quite a few people. But for me personally, it's just not something that I love to do, especially when walking into a hairdresser, I know that I'm not going to get the same hairdresser the next time around. I'm like, well, I'm just going to get these same questions every time I come. It's just not really worth my time explaining it. You know what I mean? So that has always been something that I haven't enjoyed. But I think moving into a career where that is going to be a big part of what I have to do, I'm trying to push myself and trying to get a lot better at that. Obviously, in the whole wedding photography game, it's a lot more personable, because you are going to be spending a lot more time with these people, and you're going to be meeting them prior to the day of their wedding, and you're going to be meeting them on the wedding day, I'm sure, and I'm sure you're going to meet them again afterwards, and hopefully you're trying to build this relationship with them over time and build that trust. But yeah, I just find it such a stark contrast between the things that I really dislike in having to go to the hairdresser, but then the things that I've chosen to do as a career being basically on the same path of having to make that sort of small talk. So that has just been something interesting that I have been thinking about over the past week, and I thought maybe you guys would be as well. But today I am going to jump into a topic that has come up over the past couple of weeks, because I've been rewriting the About Me section on my website and rewriting some of the copy on my website, because, as you know, I've recently tried to change into becoming a wedding photographer, and so rewriting some of that copy and changing some of the things and making them a bit more ideal to clients and a bit more personal about me as well, and things that I think have changed over the past year. Of course, over the course of starting my business, it's not the same as what it was back then, and things need to be updated. And of course, I'm targeting a different type of demographic here, so that has also encouraged me to try and change some of my wording and some of my marketing around those different types of things. So that is what has led me to the topic of today's episode, all about how to tell your own story, because it has been something that I have definitely struggled with over the past year, from the first time that I did create my website way back, probably 18 months ago. And I've changed it probably 3 or 4 times since then. And because I just wasn't happy with the way that it was worded and the things that I was saying on there, and the way that I thought it had to be told. I thought my story had to be told in a certain way in the beginning, and that is why I want to go through that today and to sort of discuss some of the things that I thought were wrong in the start and some of the misconceptions that I had about how you had to tell your story, but also go into the things that I've learnt from then and the things that have worked for me and in that going forward. I think it's important to have a brand. I think a brand is what anyone will actually resonate with. And so if you don't have a brand, or if you don't know what your brand is, or what the thing that draws other people to you is, then it's going to be very hard to sort of market that. And you need to know what that is. And I'm not saying that has to be a unique thing from other people, that it is able to be something that other people do have. You don't necessarily need to have something unique, because chances are you're not going to be completely unique from every other different person, but just unique enough. You don't need to be the same as every other person, and by knowing what that is, you can then sort of choose to target some sort of particular client that you are after. And it's not only targeting clients, but it's targeting your ideal clients, because we can sit here and say about how it's important to target as many people as possible and target the people who are going to pay you the most amount of money, or things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're doing work for people you don't enjoy doing work for, then it's going to be a hard slog, and you're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to have the career in this that you thought you would, because by the end of the first year, you're probably going to end up being burnt out. So this is why we have to author the story in a way that brings in clients who are more ideal to you and more suited to you, so that when you do work for them, you know what you provide, and they also know what you provide, because they enjoy the type of work that you provide. They're not just after anyone to do any type of job. They want you to do the work that you do, because they know what you do. And I think the more specific you can be in that, and the more personal you can be with your story, and they'll know why you're in this and what you're trying to provide. So that is just one of the reasons why it's important to construct this story about your own brand and tell your own story and your own journey, because people will actually resonate with that and people will book you for those reasons. And more likely than not, those people are going to be more ideal to you and more in line with the way that you think about the type of work that you do. In turn, just because they may not be paying you as much money as the other person, or they even might be paying you more money than the other person just because they really love your style and they're happy to pay for it. But even if they're not, I think it's worth it in the long term, because they won't provide you as much hassle and they'll be a lot easier to work with, and there won't be as much work to actually go into it. And it'll feel like you're not actually even working on the day, because you've already got everything in place and they know what to expect, you know what to expect, and you're just walking in there like it's a job for a friend or family member. So now I really want to dig into these misconceptions that I had in the beginning. And the first of the three is that it's better to be generic. In the beginning, I thought that it was a lot better to be the same as everyone else. I thought if it's working for everyone else, then this is the style that I have to try to be like. This is the brand that I have to try and represent, and this is the image that I need to try and put out there, because everyone else is trying to say these type of things. So therefore, it's working for them, so it must therefore work for me. And I was afraid to go too left field, because I didn't want people to think that I was weird, or I didn't want people to think that I wasn't like them. And as such, I think I was targeting too many people. I was trying to target everyone, and therefore I wasn't targeting anyone, because no one could really resonate with my story, because my story was just so generic that, it was hard to sort of understand who I was behind that. Even though I thought at the time that it was a great story and that it was the story of someone who had always wanted to be a photographer and had been aspiring to do it and had come from the ground up and been self-taught and all this, that, and the other. But then you look around and everyone else has done that as well. So what is it really about you that stands you apart? What is it that makes you a bit different to other people? And I've always lived by the quote that you can't stand out and fit in at the same time. I don't know why that didn't occur to me at the time when I was trying to write almost the story of myself on my website, but that was something I had to go back to later on and say, hang on a second, this isn't really standing out to anyone, because I'm just trying to be the same as everyone else. So no one was sort of reading that and saying, isn't that a great story? I really resonate with that. That's something that I've done before. I can really see a lot of personality behind that, because there really was no personality. And that was really something that I had to overcome. You may offend some people along the way. You may end up making some people think that you're weird, and that is probably going to happen. You have to come to terms with the fact that some people are probably going to think you're weird for trying to do what you do. And some people won't like you or the work that you do, but at the end of the day, that's their loss. And that's what they're missing out on. And you don't have to be their friend. You really have to accept the fact that there are so many other people out there, and you don't need to target people or be friends with people who don't like what you do, because at the end of the day, that's their loss. And you can find just as many people like them who actually like what you do and who actually resonate with your story and your journey and the things that you enjoy in life. It's all about building a community of like-minded people, as opposed to trying to impress people who aren't ever going to like what you do anyway. So I think it's so important to try to make your story unique in a way, but also understand what the unique parts of your story are. I got so wrapped up in the beginning of trying to find a unique part of my own story, because I was so confused, and I just didn't think that I had any unique parts, to be honest. I thought that everything that I'd done was the exact same as everyone else, and I had to sort of reach for other places and other things that I'd done in my life that made me stand out and draw influence from other places that were influences on me, and things that I'd done in my own life that had encouraged me to head into the career that I am now, but also things that I do in my life that don't have anything to do with my career, and things that are just interesting to other people. I think it's amazing what other people will find interesting. You can think that something isn't all that interesting, but it's only from your perspective that it's not interesting, because that's something that you do on a day-to-day. Whereas if you went and told someone else that is something that you do or something that you are interested in, they may think that is the most amazing thing ever, because they're not exposed to it on the day-to-day. And it's always surprised me every time that I tell people the things that I like to do, and they're like, wow, that's so cool, or that's amazing, I've never really heard of that, explain that a bit more, and people are generally interested because these are things that they have never heard of. So I'd encourage you to try to tell your story to other people who may not know you quite as well and see what they come back on, see what they ask you questions about, see what they think is interesting, because more often than not, you do have a lot of interesting things about yourself that you can put down there and say to help you stand out. I've seen people use the F word and swear all over their website all the time. It's not something that I would personally do, but they can get away with it because that's the audience and that's the type of people who they're trying to attract, and that's their personality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not going to sit there and judge them for trying to do that if that's the person who they are. Of course, I wouldn't say just to do that as a sort of technique to try and get people interested, because you are sort of walking that line between what they think is acceptable and what isn't. It's really going to stand out to people that you're swearing all over your website. They're going to immediately have a reaction to that. Like, that's a immediate way to sort of trigger people either into saying he's not for me, or say that she is the perfect fit for me because I'm someone who swears a lot as well, and I've always hated that I've had to hold back on that so much. And here's this person just exposing that and having that out there in the world. So it can go either way. And I think if those instances are anything to go by, then if they can put that up there and still get away with it, then you can put anything up there that you want and still attract the clients that you want to attract. There is someone out there for everyone. There are clients out there for you who are interested in the same things that you're interested in. It's just that you have to try and put that out there. As I was writing my first website, I was scared to talk about things that I was interested in, scared to talk about things that I did with my life because I was scared of turning people away, I think one of the biggest things was that I was scared to mention that I was religious because I thought that would put people offside. And especially in today's day and age, especially with the target market that I was trying to go for, I didn't think that would really resonate with a lot of people and would turn a lot of people off, because there has been a definite stigma around that. But I think that was just from my point of view, and I think that was just from the type of people who I was hanging around, not necessarily my target market. And I think as soon as I updated that, and as soon as I've been open with that, and I've sort of shared more story around that, I think it's helped me in a way, because it's sort of allowed me to attract that type of client that I want. And it's allowed me to attract people, especially in the wedding photography industry. A lot of people are religious and are having religious type ceremonies. So that has allowed me to open up doors in that avenue as well, because I'm very open to and very attracted to going and shooting religious type of ceremonies, whereas a lot of people today I see aren't interested in that. So that has sort of differentiated me in that sort of way as well, whilst it could have the effect that it could push people away and could make people not as interested in my services. It's also made other people who are on the fence even more interested, because they were really hoping that they could get someone who had that same mindset as them. The second misconception that I had was that I had to be very industry specific. And I say that because depending on what industry you're in, this is obviously going to change, but I thought it was all about talking about the equipment that I had and the skills and the technical skills that I did possess. I thought it was all about saying how much equipment I had and how many years of experience I've had and how much I know about the small details of photography, how much I'd learned. But I think the biggest realization that I had with that was that people don't care about how big your camera is, just as long as you can use it. People don't care about all the technical aspects because people don't understand the technical aspects. And so trying to provide information that they can't understand just more often than not will turn them off, because you're handing them information and details that they don't need to know. They're happy with the proof in the actual photos on your website. They're happy that maybe they've seen your Instagram page, they've seen your Facebook page, they've seen all the photos you can take. They're on your website now. They've seen a few of the photos. If you're going to then explain all of the technical aspects and how much equipment you have, I don't think that adds any value, because they can see that you can obviously take a photo. They're not interested in that. I think it's so important to not spend too much time speaking on that, because also they're spending time interested in you. So don't just bore them with details that they don't really care about and that aren't going to help them get to the conclusion that they should choose you as their photographer, And this applies in any industry. I don't think it really matters here, just as long as you have some sort of proof of the work that you're able to do. If you're walking without any proof that you can actually do the work, you probably are going to really struggle. But once you have some sort of proof, and in my case, the evidence is in all the photos that I have, I think people can see that you can do the work. So then they're more interested about other things like your approach and your style and your why behind the reason that you're actually in this industry, or the reason why you're in this career, because that ultimately allows them to build more trust in you and allows them to know what they're actually going to get, As I spoke about in the first instance, you want to attract the client that you enjoy, but in the same token, they want to know what they can actually get out of from you. And by sharing little bits and details about your approach and your style, I think really gets you both on the same page, so that if they do book you, then you both know what you're going to expect. You know that you're trying to get a client that you can relate to and that is going to like your style, but also the client knows that what they're going to get out of you and what your approach is on the day and what you're going to be able to provide for them. And so being very specific about things that they're interested in, and not so much about the equipment and the skills that go into it, because at the end of the day, that's a lot of wasted time and they're going to get very turned off by that approach. And the final misconception that I had was that I shouldn't give too much detail, right? I thought that it was better to just be short and sharp about all the little bits and pieces, especially my bio and trying to tell people who I am. I didn't think that it was super important to go into too much detail, because I was always of the opinion that no one really cares about me, and who do I think I am to try and put my story out there in the world, and why would anyone actually take the time to hear my story or read anything that I've written? So they're just going to try and skim over it, so as long as I can give them a few little details, that's all they need to know. But as I said in the last point, it's more about trying to build trust and ultimately trying to create a friendship or some sort of relationship with this type of person. If they can't see any relationship being able to happen or go forward from this point, then they're going to just move on to the next person. You don't have long to try and convince someone here. And if you're not going to give them any detail at all, they haven't got anything to go by. The worst thing is you give too much detail and someone thinks it's too much and they move on anyway, But in that scenario as well, you can also get a good case where someone comes along and exactly has the same story as you, or really resonates with the amount of detail that you've handed them, Chances are people are going to read what's there, If they get to the end of it and think it's no good, well, that's just how it is. But at least they actually got to the end of it, and you're more chance of actually convincing someone or conveying your own message and your own point of view and your story through providing more information than not enough. I'm always surprised about how much we can learn from people through just social media alone. And I think in this day and age, it's really taught us that you can really start to get to know someone just through their social media presence. I was speaking to someone the other day and I was talking about someone who they had never even met before in person, but they seemed to know a lot about them, and we seemed to be able to talk about them and about their life and about different things because they had just learned it all on social media. And if that's anything to go by, if you can create that type of connection online, then there's definitely something to be said about being able to put as much detail in as you can and being able to tell your story the best way you can. There's no point just writing 100 words on yourself. If you're able to write 1,000 words on yourself, you may as well give too much detail than not enough, because I think in today's day and age, if someone's going to go to your website, if someone's taking the time to get there, they're clearly interested and they want to know more. You may as well give them everything, and then if they get to the end of it and say, that's all too much for me, then that's their own decision. But people are more likely to get to the end of that and think, oh, wow, I actually have a connection with this person now. I actually know so much about their life, and their life actually sounds interesting. Even if they're not the same type of person, you might be someone who they aspire to be by actually reading that stuff. And then they might email you and ask a few more questions, and then you might actually meet up to discuss the potential work, and you're still over the deciding phase. But because they know so much about you, that conversation is going to go a lot easier, because they know who you are, and you sort of know a little bit about them because you're assuming that they're in the same type of position as you, is that they're an open person and they're really interested in hearing what you're talking about, and you've got to be then interested in what they're trying to say. So I think that is where it comes in, and the fact that you can build that relationship over just them reading something on your website or over them just observing you on social media, I think is so important, and that is one of the bigger things in today's day and age, and that you can actually book people based on that alone. And I mean, all this detail doesn't even have to be about your profession. You don't have to be talking about things you've done in the profession or things that you've done along your journey to the profession. These can be things about any other aspect of your life, and you can even go into the minutest of details about other things in your life that don't even make any sense at all in this. If you can tell a story about something else in your life that someone else can say, oh, I've had that happen to me as well, or they say, oh, that's really interesting, I'd love to know more about that. That then makes them more likely to actually reach out to you and actually say something, because they're interested in something else completely off the track that you didn't even think about. You don't have to have 10 years of experience in the industry to draw upon to write something on your website. You can speak about things that you've done in the past, things that you've done in complete other areas, but as long as they're interests that other people have, which I'm sure they are, because anything you can be interested in, you can find others who are. So the fact that you can write about something that you're interested in, you will resonate with other people. And more likely than not, the types of things that you're interested in probably relate to themselves in one way or another. And a lot of people, if they get to your website and they can find at least 2 things that you do that they do as well, then end up more likely to book your services than someone else because they would much rather have that connection than someone else who's not going to have as much input or as much personality to bring to the table when it comes to that relationship between you and the client. And that's probably where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. It's been a bit of a shorter one this week, but I just wanted to drive that point home about just being yourself. This is all that this comes back to, in that authoring your own story in a way that other people can understand who you are and actually resonate with your own story and resonate with things that you do that aren't just about your career, but about other things in your life as well. And don't be afraid to put things out there. Just be yourself and don't second guess it. If it feels right, then add it in there. You can never have too much information, and don't be afraid to be different than other people, because that is the way that you will stand out to some people. You can't target everyone. You've got to target the people who you want to work with, and using your own story to do that, I think, is the best way, because only you know who you would like to work with. And chances are these people are the type of people who you would like to be friends with as well. And they're trying to come at it from that perspective just as much as you are, especially in a creative career where you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. It's so important to author the story in a way that this could be the start of a longer term relationship than just someone like your hairdresser who you may never actually have any contact with again. So this is so important to get these things down, and you only have one shot really to convince someone that you're the right fit for them. And by being able to put as much information out there that is relevant to them and show them your story, I think is the best way to convince them on this relationship working, but also convince yourself that the type of people that you're going to be attracting are the type of people that you want to be working with. So that is where I'm going to leave today's episode, guys. I really hope you did get something out of this. And if you did, I'd love to hear about what you're thinking of this podcast so far. We're about 3 months in, and I'm so proud that I'm still able to keep these episodes up every Monday and keep them on rolling forward. And yeah, if you have been enjoying any of these episodes, I would love it if you did share these episodes around with friends and family, other people who you think may be interested, other people who are in creative careers, or people who are trying to get into creative careers. I think I don't think you can ever have too much information, and so anything that can be helpful to them, I think they would really enjoy. And I would have really enjoyed all this information, being able to hear from someone in my situation when I was first starting out. And I still do listen to a lot of other people's podcasts and still draw information from them, and people who are at my level, people who are just starting out, and people who have been in successful careers for years. It's all about learning from as many people as you can. And I don't think there are too many perspectives that we can have on any certain thing. So if you did enjoy this episode, guys, would love it if you could share it around with other people. But if not, that is okay as well. You don't have to share it at all. That is quite all right. And I hope that you do come back next week, though, and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye.